Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We have reason to believe that the attack was a state or state-sponsored actor was involved in these cyber attacks.
The BC government says another country could have been trying to breach provincial government systems. What officials are doing to protect our information. Plus, gorgeous lights, potential interruptions. Several solar storms could make the northern lights visible in our region this weekend. However,
this can cause disruptions to high-frequency radio communications for aviation.
And
go, Canucks, go!
Game 2. Vancouver Canucks fans hit Rogers Arena and public viewing parties as the playoff series against Edmonton rolls on.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The head of BC's Public Service says a state or state-sponsored actor was behind 3 recent cyber attacks on government systems. The CBC's Michelle Gassoub joins us now with more. Michelle, the government called it a, quote, very sophisticated operation. What else did they say about how they came to the conclusion that a foreign state may have been involved?
Dan, the province is being very careful with the words it is using to describe this attempted breach, but their conclusion that a foreign state or state-sponsored actor is likely behind this is the fact that there was some kind of attempt to hide the attack. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth addressed this today.
The only kind of level of being able to do what they were seeing and covering up the tracks is the hallmarks of a state actor or a state-sponsored actor.
We also learned more about the timeline of events today. So there were 3 separate attempts to breach security. The first was detected a month ago on April 10th. A second attempted breach was detected on the 29th. And at that point, public servants across BC were told to change their passwords. Then there was a third attempt May 6th. That's just 4 days ago. And it was that attempt earlier this week that led investigators to believe the attacker was trying to cover their tracks.
Michelle, aside from what we heard from Mike Farnworth and other officials, what other questions remain here?
Well, of course, the number one question, which state might be behind this? Farnworth said the province isn't withholding that information from the public. He himself does not know at this time. A second big question here, was personal data compromised by this attempted breach? Right now, the province says there is no evidence to suggest sensitive data was threatened. And finally, there is the question of motivation. We know this was not a ransomware attack. There have been no demands of money from the attacker. So if not money, why would a state actor want to access the BC government's data? That is unanswered at this time.
Michelle Gassoub reporting for us. Thanks very much. BC's Minister of Finance is calling it a career in provincial politics. Katrina Conroy says she will not be running again in the fall election. Conroy will retire after nearly 2 decades representing the West Kootenays. She's held various roles, including Minister of Children and Family Development and Minister of Forests. Conroy thanks her family for their support throughout her career and says she looks forward to spending more time with them once she's done serving. A 26-year-old woman has now been charged with assault after police say she tried to snatch a baby from his mother on Commercial Drive yesterday afternoon. Police say a woman was breastfeeding the 4-month-old in her parked car when a stranger opened the door and climbed inside. Investigators say the suspect tried grabbing the baby and the mother before others stepped in.
We commend the bystanders for intervening and holding this person down, so we were able to get there quickly, make an arrest, and before this person hurt anybody else.
The mother in the car was left with minor injuries. The baby was not hurt. The suspect remains in custody until her next court appearance. An overnight fire has destroyed an historic church, an old school, and a home in the southern BC community of Greenwood. Take a look. The blaze broke out around 2:30 in the morning. No one was hurt, thankfully, and crews stopped it from spreading to other nearby homes. But the damage, as you can see, is massive. The church was the second oldest in Greenwood. St. Jude's Anglican dates back to 1901. 3 homes also suffered heat damage, but they were saved after a brief evacuation.
Within 15 minutes, I realized it's time for us to get out. So grabbed a few pictures, grabbed my passports, got the cat, got my son, and banged on a few doors to make sure everybody was aware of what was going on. My first instinct was to get a hose, because you can see amber sitting the top of my roof. And then I realized, no, it ain't worth this. So we just, hightailed her down to the coffee shop.
Jepson says the community has rallied together to support one another. It's not yet clear what caused the blaze. Eyes around the world are skyward to see colorful northern lights caused by a severe solar storm. Tonight is special because even places like southern Canada, our region, will likely see the lights. Lindsay Duncombe shows us what's behind this rare phenomenon.
From the rooftop of his Vancouver townhouse, Robert Lyons is getting ready to photograph weather from out of this world.
I'm hoping a massive swath of green over the city skyline, and hopefully it'll dance. You can see the actual photons moving in a pattern, and it's just spectacular when it happens.
Already, European sky watchers have captured the rare phenomenon, northern lights far further south than usual. Here's why it's happening. Large solar flares on the surface of the sun, eruptions of plasma, sending millions of tons of charged particles towards our atmosphere.
Multiple, as many as 5 over the last couple of days that have all subsequently been directed at Earth. Having something where we have this number in rapid succession is pretty unique and exciting for us.
Like hurricanes, geomagnetic storms are rated on a scale of 1 to 5. This one could be a 5. All that magnetic energy in the atmosphere could damage power grids.
Getting to work in Montreal this morning was an exercise in frustration. The lights were out everywhere.
That's what happened in 1989 when a space storm created a 9-hour blackout in Quebec. Worst case scenario, satellites could be vulnerable too.
When there's these big magnetic storms, there are a lot of high energy electrons and protons flying around in space, and they're going so fast they can go through the skin of the spacecraft into the electronics inside.
So the head of Canada's Space Weather Group will be part of a team monitoring the storm, sharing data with industry. They'll be up all night.
Over the North Shore Mountains, northern lights are raging.
So will Robert Lyons.
So this is a reminder that there are big, magical, sort of mysterious things in the universe happening, and this puts us in touch with it.
A rooftop connection to the beauty and the danger of space. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spent part of the day in Kelowna to talk about supports for communities ahead of BC's wildfire season.
People are worried about what the summer might bring. People are worried what the future might hold for themselves, for next generations.
The Prime Minister announced Ottawa will double the volunteer firefighter tax credit and provide $800,000 to train wildland firefighters. He also says his government would provide $175 million to Indigenous communities to fund emergency preparedness and response programs. The BC Wildfire Service, meanwhile, is warning drivers they may see smoke if they're traveling along the Alaska Highway or Highway 77, this weekend. Fort Nelson and the northeastern part of BC are seeing more fire activity, partly because of persistent drought. A storm is also passing through that area that will whip up winds to 70 kilometers an hour. Experts fear that could whip up holdover fires that have been smoldering since last year.
Winds have shifted from a southwest to a northwest. And what that means is that the side of the fires are now becoming the heads of the fire. So this is often where you see rapid growth.
Right now, the largest out-of-control wildfire in our province overlaps BC, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories. It's caused Fort Liard in the Northwest Territories, just north of Fort Nelson, to be put on evacuation notice. The Donny Creek wildfire has also reignited and is currently classified as out of control. Right now, there are 7 out-of-control blazes, 3 of which are holdovers from last summer. Karis Hogg joins us with a first look at the weather, and we're getting set for a nice warm weekend on the south coast, Karis, but you see these photos, and we have to remember that the wildfire danger is on so many other people's minds.
Yes, that's right. It is very summery out there, and unfortunately, that means that it is increasing the fire danger rating. So taking a look here, this is from the BC Wildfire Service. It's the fire danger rating, and like the northern part of the province is either moderate, high, or extreme for the most part when it comes to the fire danger rating. And then we've also got another pocket here, in, south central, like the Caribou region. There's also some extreme little tiny pockets in there as well. So this unseasonably warm weather and dry is unfortunately contributing to that. So looking at the satellite and radar over the past 24 hours, you can see again very dry conditions for the entire province, just hardly really any precipitation at all. And those warm temperatures are going to continue. Satellite and radar last night and tonight, last night and today for the South Coast, for Metro Vancouver. Very, very dry. And as I said, I mean, it felt like summer out there today. And tomorrow it's going to be the same. Sunset at 8:41 this evening, and it'll be warm this evening too, 19 down to 11 overnight. And tomorrow morning sunrise at 5:38. A very early start to the day, and it will be a warm one. I will have more details later in the show.
Sounds good. Thanks, Karis. A new pedestrian and cycling overpass in North Vancouver has been given the go-ahead. The Casano-Lutete Bridge will connect the Lutete and Cedar Village neighborhoods. It runs over the area of Highway 1 known as the Cut. It's meant to improve safety and connectivity.
The Casano-Lutete overpass is a great symbol of some of the things that matter most to the people of North Vancouver: accessibility, inclusivity, and getting outside and enjoying the great outdoors.
The long-awaited overpass will also give many local students a safer route to school. Public consultation began in 2017, with people saying the Trans-Canada could be a barrier to traveling between neighborhoods, pushing them to jump in their cars rather than take a quick walk or bike ride. The bridge is set to break ground early next year after the province gave the city of North Vancouver $4 million. A Kelowna man says the spruce tree in his front yard just got more than a trim when a Fortis BC crew came by unannounced. The homeowner now says his giant conifer is a mangled mess. But as Brady Strachan explains, the utility says it's not really worried about safety. Pardon me, it's only worried about safety, not aesthetics.
This is the site Julio De Palma came home to after work about a month ago. And just looking at the trim job a Fortis BC crew did to his spruce tree, it's no wonder he's upset with how it looks.
They basically cut the one side of this tree.
De Palma says the crew not only topped the tree, it cut down all the branches on the street-facing side, leaving it as a mangled eyesore to anyone walking by.
I can't put up with a tree that looks like this, honestly. The laughingstock of Barclay Road.
The thing that bothers De Palma the most, however, is that the utility company didn't notify him that it was going to trim his tree.
Why wouldn't somebody notify me? At least that way I could have my own arborist go in and do the trimming that I wanted.
A spokesperson for Fortis BC admits the company did not contact De Palma before it sent a crew over to trim his tree. He says the company only contacts homeowners in a case where a tree needs to be taken down for safety reasons. As for the way it looks now, the company says that's not its concern.
Trees that are growing too close to power lines can pose a significant threat to our communities. We're not there to trim for aesthetic reasons. We're there to keep the community safe.
De Palma says he spent the past month trying to reach a resolution with the company to no avail.
I basically now look at it and go, I don't want that tree there anymore. It's an eyesore for the neighborhood. It's an eyesore for us. And, I want it out.
De Palma wants Fortis to come back, remove the tree, and plant a new one. The company says that's not something it's prepared to do, no matter how the tree looks. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
A new housing project for First Nations people on Vancouver Island is now being built thanks to an old custom. When it's finished, the complex will house 35 Ahousaht families who live away from home. CBC Indigenous Affairs reporter Wamish Hamilton has more from Port Alberni.
And picture this big apartment building here.
Like this is where it'll be, right?
Yeah, right here.
Wally Samuel is an Ahousaht elder. He's lived away from his traditional territory on the west coast of Vancouver Island for more than half a century. Port Alberni is home, and that's where he's building housing for 35 Ahousaht families.
We've been asking for it for a long time. We want our local decision making here for our housing needs. And we've been telling our chief and council for many years. And finally, the chief and council of 4 years ago took action and kick-started this project for us.
This was an elementary school the city was going to tear down. Instead, they sold the land to the Ahousaht for $1. Before that could happen, an old protocol came first. The Ahousaht approached the Sechot and Hoopachisit First Nations, since Port Alberni is in their shared territory.
Feel great about the protocol. Second, just look up to them for like saying, you know what, we're going to do what we can to help build housing for our members, even just outside of our community and other places. I think that was a bold move by them.
BC Housing put in $6 million. There will be homes for all kinds of families, studios, up to 4-bedroom apartments. Samuel says a permanent place for the roughly 500 Ahousaht who live in Port Alberni will change lives.
Even though I don't live at home, we still have a home here, Ahousaht, and that's who we're looking after. There are Ahousaht no matter where they live. You know, it's really great because I've watched our people struggle in this city since 1966.
Port Alberni's mayor says the city saw how it could help with a municipal land transfer.
I want to make sure that every child in our community has access to the basic needs that they should have: safe, accessible housing, food, and everything else.
Alice Sam works as a cultural advocate with CUAS, an Indigenous crisis line. She spends a lot of time helping people get into housing.
The thing is, I wish I had that when my kids were little. I was a single mom. I brought up my children in the city, and it was, if I had a community to raise my children, it would have made a difference. It's important for us in urban Indigenous people to have a place that is home away from home and in community, and serving us as more of being a part of a community versus being a part of a city.
This is seemingly unassuming now, but what stands out about this project are the forethought of the Ahousaht Nation for their urban members living away from home, and the cooperation between the municipality, First Nations, and the province that will all lead to the completion of this project by this time next year.
But we're thinking of the next generations of houses that's growing up here.
Right.
They're the ones that's falling through the cracks.
The Ahousaht will soon welcome people to move in to their home away from home in the Alberni Valley. Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Port Alberni.
Well, in about an hour, the puck will drop for Game 2 of the second-round Stanley Cup playoff series between the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers. Canucks fans are fired up after the squad took a 1-0 series lead, overcoming a 3-goal deficit. Now watch parties have been announced across the Lower Mainland. Our Michelle Morton joins us from a watch party on the North Shore down at the shipyards. Michelle, how's the energy there?
Hey, Dan. Yeah, the energy there, or rather here, I should say, it's so positive. Everybody's so excited. You'll see behind me a large TV screen. Dozens of people already bringing their own chairs here. There are some chairs that are already set up here, but dozens of families already setting up. Kids, as you can see, having a time already, and the game hasn't even started yet, like you said.
And the weather's awesome. I'm sure the viewers are going to be like totally pumped, so it's going to be a great time.
I think it's going to be another close game, and I think the Canucks are going to win again.
Canucks all the way!
Whole bunch of families and loved ones there. That's awesome. Michelle, how are city officials keeping the watch party family-friendly as it looks like?
Yeah, it is family friendly. So in this section we're in, it's there's no alcohol permitted in here. Like you can see, lots of kids and families around, but there is a beer garden set up outside, and of course, plenty of restaurants around here. There are some police officers I'm seeing walk around, not seeing any issues that I'm hearing of.
I had a lot of people over the first round saying, when are we having a viewing party? When are we having a viewing party? So, you know what? We took a look to see, can we make this happen? And so it was like, let's let's make it work with the shipyard opening. And so here we are, and people couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, and so as you can hear, a lot of excitement here and a lot of pressure. This is the first time the Oilers and Canucks are facing off in the playoffs since '92, I believe we talked about earlier, Dan.
A little bit of trivia there. Michelle Morton joining us live from the North Vancouver. That's right, North Vancouver Shipyards. Have fun, Michelle. Thanks again. Go Canucks. Mother's Day is this Sunday. Well, some of you may be prepping a meal or buying some flowers. We decided to take a look at how motherhood has changed over time. After the break, we're going to rewind to the 60s. As we head into Mother's Day weekend, we want to take a look at how motherhood has changed over time. In 1968, CBC News featured Rosemary and Graham Waldy, shedding light on how a typical middle-class Vancouver family lived and worked at that time. This clip was filmed at a turning point when their eldest daughter was moving out of the family home to get married. Have a look.
Yes, I'm sure.
One family, 6 individuals. The children sometimes rebelling against the parents, who have irrevocably molded their personalities, the father and mother confident that they have raised their children in the best way that the circumstances would allow.
My wife can communicate with her kids just like one of them. I think she's very skillful this way, and so I'll use her as an intermediary between us. And so if there's any problem with the children, we've either said it jointly or she said it for me, and I've backed her up without question. Like, you know, I haven't felt that I haven't always agreed with my wife the way she's brought up her children, but I also realize that if I don't, then I have to do it myself.
He really didn't have too much to do with the overall running of looking after the children. It wasn't a matter of he left it to me. We talked things over. It was just, I don't know whether I interpreted him for the kids or, I don't know. The way we lived, it was just necessarily I was the, you know, the thing with my children, and my husband did his job and we were there. See, I've always listened to what the kids had to say, whether I believed in it or not, and I always encouraged them to say. I don't want them rubber stamps of me. I have no confidence. I have a lot of things wrong with me. So I didn't want this to happen to the kids. I mean, this was my life.
Joining us now to look at what we just heard and more is Sylvia Fuller. She's a sociology professor at UBC. Thanks for joining us. It sounds like the Wallies had a rather clear division of labor in that house at that time. How common was that in the 1960s?
Well, that was certainly the dominant pattern, right? You had this idea that, you know, mothers had a certain role and fathers had a certain role, and they were very distinct and they were complementary. So men were mostly involved in bringing in the money to financially support the family, but all the day-to-day work of being with the kids, supporting them, parenting them effectively was really the domain of women. So if we go back, I don't have data from the 1960s, but mid-1970s, about 41% of mothers were employed. And of course, now that's changed radically. So the vast majority of mothers are employed. We're at about 77% there. And most mothers are employed full-time. So we're seeing much more convergence with women's employment. And of course, men are also more involved with their kids' lives than they were before.
Are there numbers on how much more common it is for fathers and male figures to be involved in, for example, division of labor and parenting? I had to laugh when the husband said, I backed my wife up without question because if she didn't do the parenting, it would be, quote, left to me.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because you listen to that clip and it sounds like, oh, what a terrible thing. I would have to do the parenting. And in fact, what we see now is that dads want to be involved in the parenting, right? And moms want the dads to be involved too. So there's a sea change in sort of attitudes around that. So we can track this to some extent over time. We do see that men are putting in more time in the day-to-day hands-on work of taking care of kids. But at the same time, we haven't seen a complete convergence there. So of the amount of time, and you know, the most recent data that we really have released here is back from 2015. We have more recent data, but we haven't really had that released yet. You know, 65% of the time that was spent taking care of kids and families was being done by mothers. So dads are definitely more involved. We see a change over time. They're more likely to be involved. They spend more time when they are involved, but we're not at convergence. And that's still the case even when moms are working full time. They're still putting in more time in the childcare than the dads are.
And as we heard from the mother in 1968, quote, this was my life. We have gone from motherhood being the primary role a woman was expected to fill, perhaps that time, to some of them having an expectation on some women that they can have and are expected to have a full career as well. How do we balance those two? And do you think it's gotten more manageable over time?
Well, the question of more manageable has to do with the infrastructure that we have, right? So we are doing things like building up our childcare infrastructure right now in the country, and that is really critically important to enable both parents to be employed. Is you need to have affordable, accessible, high-quality childcare. So we are building up those supports there. So in that respect, we will see that becoming easier. On the other hand, there are also some trends in employment that make it a little bit more challenging for parents to combine, a situation where both parents are employed and all the needs of childcare. And so we see things like the rise of more irregular schedules. And it's really when you don't know when you're going to be working day to day, week to week, it's really hard to manage that. As I have my kid in the background talking here. So that's harder. And we also see creeping up of hours and expectations for people in professional jobs in particular to be putting in really long hours. And so that's getting harder as well.
Sylvia Fuller, sociology professor at UBC, we very much appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
A big league team, another one, is coming to Toronto, where the WNBA is setting up shop in Canada, and what that means for women's sports in this country. Stay with us. Toronto can now get ready for a new pro sports team. CBC News has learned an expansion franchise is going to be granted to the city by the Women's National Basketball Association. Ethel Musa has more on the impact on Canada's sports scene.
Women's professional basketball is coming to Toronto, and fans couldn't be happier.
I think women are amazing, and I'm so excited to go watch my first WNBA game.
I think for girls, having those role models out there is going to be a big positive for girls' sports across the country.
Women can do anything that man can do, so bring it on! Yeah, for the women! Yes, I like it.
CBC News has learned Toronto billionaire Larry Tannenbaum was granted the expansion franchise with the Women's National Basketball Association. Tannenbaum is a minority owner and chairman of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, which owns teams like the Maple Leafs and the Raptors.
The little girl in me is just like bubbling with joy.
Nakisa Kumal Singh founded the basketball league Hoop Queens to give female players the opportunity to play and compete in the sport. She says having a professional women's basketball team in Canada is a game changer.
Canada deserves a WNBA team because we have proven and shown time after time that there's a market here, one. Two, that there's talent.
Time out on the floor. Talent like Bridget Carlton, who played to a sold-out crowd during the league's preseason game in 2023 in Toronto's Scotiabank Arena.
I think we've seen the demand has always been there. Anytime a women's game of any type has been on broadcast television, we have records. We see with the PWHL selling out everywhere it goes. People want to be there.
The WNBA did not confirm the Toronto move, but in a statement to CBC, it says any new team requires a vote of the WNBA and NBA Board of Governors. The official announcement by the league is set for later this month, and Toronto's new team is expected to begin playing in 2026. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
The UN General Assembly has now passed a resolution backing full membership for an independent Palestinian state. It's a symbolic move since any membership must still be approved by the Security Council. Canada was one of 25 nations to abstain, and that's different from Ottawa's stance up until now. The Prime Minister spoke about his reasons for that change today.
Canada has decided to change our position from no at the UN to abstaining, to reflecting that our long-standing position that you could only recognize the state of Palestine as an outcome at the end of a process leading to a two-state solution, we now recognize that it may happen sooner than at the end of the process as a way of pushing towards that two-state solution.
The U.S. has now announced an additional $400 million in weapons and equipment for Ukraine. It came after Ukrainian forces said they repelled a Russian ground attack near the northeastern city of Kharkiv. As Briar Stewart explains, there's speculation Moscow is planning a summer offensive in that region.
As the sun was rising, Russia's latest drone attack on the Kharkiv region. At least 3 homes caught fire and dozens of others were damaged. Around the same time, Ukraine says Russia launched a ground offensive towards Vovchansk, a city less than 5 kilometers from the border. The military started to evacuate the few thousand people still living there. Tamaz Gambarashvili is in Vovchansk and spoke to CBC News despite a shaky cell phone signal and the ongoing explosions. He said while people were used to shelling, they were, quote, not ready to wake up to such a massive attack. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was meeting with the president of Slovakia, said the country's military was prepared. But he said it's important to understand that Russia can increase and bring more forces in this direction. Officials had been expecting Russia to launch an offensive in the region, which is home to Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. Russia failed to capture the city in the early days of its invasion, and since then Ukraine has built up its defenses, making it a much harder target. There can be no what-ifs. They will not break through, said this woman. No, I will not go anywhere, says this man. I will be in Kharkiv till the end. While Russia's military might not be able to seize large areas, the offensive could further stretch Ukraine's resources.
To thin the Ukrainian defenses in Donbass and to make resource management when it comes to the new supplies that are coming in from the US more difficult.
Ukraine says it has sent reinforcements to the Kharkiv region and it's preparing for a counter-offensive in the east, which it expects Russia to launch in the coming weeks. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Controversy is greeting a new advertisement from Apple. It's for an iPad, but as Anis Haydari reports, it has touched a nerve around the question of technology versus art.
Maybe Apple wanted to show the new iPad crushing it.
replacing everything artistic with the thin device. Eye-popping for some.
I watched it and I had like this visceral, gross reaction to literally destroy art to say we're better. That is not appealing to artists. I don't know who they thought they were appealing to, but it was not artists.
And celebrities saying the same thing. Actress Justine Bateman tweeting, "Tech and AI means to destroy the arts." And Hugh Grant comparing the ad to the destruction of the human experience. But Apple may not be targeting established artists.
Who we don't see complaining are people who are getting access to this level of joy and creativity for the first time with some of these tools. So you could really make the argument maybe that Apple is just going after a new generation.
Branding experts say Apple may not be hurt by a backlash.
You don't need brands to love you. You just need people to be aware of you and remember you and think of you when they're at the point of choosing to buy something.
The difference is striking.
And with no big innovations this time around, Apple may welcome any attention.
Really, we're all still talking about the introduction of a slightly smaller iPad. So despite the controversy, it's working, and it's working really, really well.
But after days of backlash on social media, an apology from Apple, saying it missed the mark on this video. Anis Hidari, CBC News, Calgary.
They are called the Dirty Dozen, the most found waste that washes up on our beaches. But this year's list is notable for what is not on it. We'll tell you what it is after this. Just before we get to our full BC weather, we have an update on the out-of-control wildfire near Fort Nelson just a few moments ago. The BC Wildfire Service says evacuations of several neighborhoods are now underway. Everyone living east of the Young Living site at Mile 308 are being asked to leave their homes immediately. This includes Walsh Road, Radar Road, Whiskey Jack Crescent, and all residential areas east of Walsh Road. We'll bring you any updates as they happen and coming up in our late news. Now let's get to our weather. Karis Hogg joins us now. And we're seeing it play out right now, Karis, with that the danger of wildfires across our province.
Yeah, that's right. Fort Nelson right around here. And you can see this is from the BC Wildfire Service. When we look at the fire danger rating for the province, you know, this whole quadrant of BC is under high or extreme fire danger rating. And that's because we're still sitting under a very strong ridge of high pressure. We have been for the last day, and we are going to continue to do so for the next day. Taking a look at some temperatures, today's highs, it was a warm one. I mean, here on the South Coast, it definitely felt like summer. You look at temperatures, Fort St. John, 24, Prince George and Williams Lake at 25, and then through the Okanagan, Asuyas, 29, Kelowna, 29, Castlegar, 29. And then tomorrow, those temperatures really, it does stay really quite warm for much of the province. 30 Kamloops, 30 Asuyas, 23 in Victoria, 27 in Abbotsford. Now, when we get to Sunday, that's when the high pressure ridge will start to break down, and some of those temperatures across the province will start to come down a little bit. There could be some showers through the northern part of the province, more cloud cover. However, still very warm temperatures in the south. So you can see 30 for Kamloops, Kelowna, and Asuyas still on Sunday. And then it's not really until Monday that we sort of really get a reprieve from those high temperatures. Taking a look at the South Coast, past 6 hours, it has been very dry. And an interesting note, coming up, we have a solar storm, which is an interesting phenomenon. It could be touching down, affecting Earth in the next day or two. And what it means is the likelihood of seeing aurora borealis, northern lights, is quite high down here on the south coast of BC. So looking at the 5-day forecast, we got a warm one tomorrow, humidex 29 inland, and we don't really get a serious chance of showers until Wednesday.
Okay, Karis, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
If you see plastic pollution in and around the water near you, you might see fewer straws. So says an environmental conservation group. As Michelle Morton explains, it comes after Ottawa introduced a ban on some single-use plastics.
I'm down in English Bay, where it's not uncommon to find pieces of trash like this on the beach. Well, every year, volunteers with OceanWise get together to run community cleanups across Canada, and they just released their latest shoreline cleanup impact report. And it shows for 2023, for the first time in a decade, plastic straws didn't make the Dirty Dozen list.
The Dirty Dozen is the list of the items that we find most commonly littered on shorelines when we do cleanups over the course of the year.
In 2022, the federal government banned the manufacturing and import of some single-use plastics, including straws, and a year later, BC joined Ottawa in banning the sale of those items. But OceanWise says it's still too early to say if the regulations are the reason fewer straws have been found on Canadian shorelines.
We really hope that this is a trend that we'll see when we record data again next year, to show that these bans actually work and they actually are helping us protect oceans here in Canada and across North America too.
I guess it's good that people are using less plastic straws now. I mean, people find the paper ones and the cardboard ones frustrating, but at least it's helping the planet, I guess. So hopefully we just need to work on the other 12 items that are still polluting the ocean.
Good for Vancouverites for decreasing their plastic straw use and all the government laws that are kind of making it harder to do that.
There's a lot of other options right now, and even McDonald's is giving out paper ones, so it doesn't seem to be a big necessity anymore to have plastic straws.
Some other items that did make the Dirty Dozen list include paper, coffee cups and lids, plastic bags, and the number one, cigarette butts. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Insomnia, anxiety, Mood swings, all are symptoms some people experience when going through perimenopause. It's a process of change that comes before menopause. As Jessica Chung tells us, experts say people don't realize it can start as early as your late 30s.
When it comes to the big hormonal changes throughout a woman's life, there's puberty, and then it's made to seem like there's not much to worry about until menopause. But that's not always true.
Day-to-day things were just really difficult to do and overwhelming. It was like really extreme anxiety. And when I looked into it, my friend said, well, maybe you have perimenopause. And at the time I was 42, so I said, are you crazy? Because I'd never heard that in my life, that at that age you would actually start having those symptoms.
Perimenopause. It happens in the years leading up to menopause, and it can start as early as your mid-30s.
But it's when the ovaries say, hey, I am now panicking, I'm not getting pregnant, I'm running out of eggs, and you get very big spikes in estrogen and then very big drops. So there's a lot of dysregulation of hormones. And it's a phase, and it can last 8 to 10 years. Which is regrettable for some women because it's a long time to wait.
Symptoms include mood changes, changes in libido, vaginal dryness, trouble with sleep, night sweats, and hot flashes.
Yeah, so it was the anxiety and, sometimes panic attacks, but then also like extreme periods, so heavy periods. A lot of really bad cramps.
Some women will not suffer at all. 75% of women will have symptoms that are in need of support and management. This is basically the most important time in the life of a woman where she's at risk of developing depression and anxiety independent of her previous history, and it's all hormone related.
And so I really dismissed it and went through several years of the anxiety and all the symptoms without checking in. I kind of felt ashamed because I was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I even go out and do things?
Eleanor got help from healthcare professionals and is now taking progesterone and supplements. And if you're struggling with perimenopause, doctors say it's important to see what your options are for relief.
Sometimes we'll say, okay, well, let's keep a perimenopause diary and figure out what are your symptoms, what can we manage with your lifestyle, what can we manage with natural interventions, and what are things that we need to jump in.
It is very commonly dismissed again, and everybody passes for having depression and not being well and so on. There is help out there. No is not an answer, and you need to go out there and find the help you deserve to have so you can live your best life.
Jessica Chung reporting. Ahead of Mother's Day this weekend, a Toronto business is promising those early days with a newborn don't have to be so tough. Paula Duhachik takes us inside a postnatal retreat.
Hi, did you have fun?
2 days after Ashley Thomason gave birth, she checked into the Almacare postnatal retreat, where for 2 weeks she had 24/7 help from nurses, doulas, and lactation consultants.
I just broke down in tears because I just felt so relieved that I was stepping into somewhere where I know I would have the support that I really needed at that time.
Similar retreats are already popular in countries like China and South Korea, but Almacare in Toronto bills itself as the first in Canada.
So here we have the baby bassinet, fully stocked.
Co-founder Hannah McConville says the retreat is based on the Chinese tradition of sitting the month, a 30-day period of postpartum recovery.
If a mother is better rested and is properly nourished, she will thrive, and so will her baby.
At Almacare, rooms cost upwards of $850 a night. The company also offers home care packages starting at around $2,200. This family doctor understands why there's a market for the service.
Oftentimes people feel like they need a bit more support.
But she says moms who need help the most are likely priced out.
I think it's unfortunate that not everybody who needs it can have it. I think the convenience of this service is hard to reproduce in a public system.
The company's co-founder says she understands it's not affordable for everyone, and they're working on what free resources they can offer. As for mom Ashley Thomason, she says her stay was worth a splurge.
I wish it was available in some form to all women, because it really made a huge difference in my own recovery.
If she has another baby, she plans to make another reservation. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Have you bought a gift? Maybe flowers? Made some brunch plans? It is Mother's Day on Sunday. But is it time to expand the scope of what that day means? We celebrate mother figures after the break.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
May is Asian Heritage Month, and we're celebrating by sharing the stories of amazing Asian Canadians who are making meaningful contributions in the community. Visit cbc.ca/BC Community to learn more. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
From sisters to aunts to grandmas, even a volleyball coach.
Yep, with Mother's Day around the corner, we hit the streets to find out who else fills that mother role. And here's what people had to say.
I'm just talking to people about mother figures.
Mother figures?
Yeah, like, do you have someone in your life who is a mother figure?
I would say my aunt.
I guess like the closest thing for me would be my grandma.
Both of my sisters.
I'd say my girlfriend, if that's anything at all, yeah.
Our volleyball coaches probably, yeah. I think that your mom could be anybody who is that figure in your life. A lot of people don't have. I do have a mom figure and I love her and she's that person too, but it doesn't have to be your genetic or adoptive mom. You can have a mother figure who is anybody who just fulfills that role.
A future mother right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Since the end of February, there's twins and it's been a complicated pregnancy. And we've been at 3 different hospitals with the nurses and all the help from obviously doctors too, but with the nurses, they've been the ones that are a little more closer with us and see them more and taking more care of us and whatnot for all the different nights we've had to spend in hospitals and whatnot. So they're like a second mom to us currently when our moms are not in the province.
I recently just broke my arm, and she has been acting like a mother to me for sure. Just making food, making sure I'm comfortable at home. And
she's taken care of me a few times when I was sick when I was younger and things like that. So she's just always looked out for me, always really easy to talk to.
And even now I still go to them for advice, and yeah, we're really close.
Yeah, I don't know. We tell them everything.
Yeah.
They just help us out.
Yeah. I think it means a lot to have someone who supports you and cheers you on, and whenever you have, a question or need life advice, they're there for you.
Anything else you'd like to add?
We love our moms too.
Yeah, we love our moms. We love our moms.
Some good advice there. And yes, all hail the mother figures. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And Janella Hamilton will have your next local news after playoff hockey and the National later tonight with all the latest on the wildfire situation in Fort Nelson. In the meantime, have a really great weekend. And to those of you celebrating, happy Mother's Day.